you have support on the way. It's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think if you give it to players in small enough pieces, they're going to start thinking about their own training more, and they're going to be able to take more responsibility on that, and the coach is never going to be there the 100% of the time. So I think that's going to be effective for the player and be able to, like, if you have players that can take responsibility in the team, then you will have a strong team as well. Before going to the Finland process, I'm going to show a quick video here. Any thoughts of that? We had Mika there. Yep. Yeah, you need a lot of people to do one simple thing, right? Yep, okay. Yeah, that's very true. Also, probably the answer that everybody needs to trust that there's a person doing the job that they're to do. Everybody has a clear role, and if you're not taking care of the fact that everybody needs to perform, it's just going to fall down. But that's not really probably the main thing here. I've found out that in the different teams, in different team meetings, the first thing is when the coach starts asking questions, is that you actually start thinking yourself. Even worse, if the coach randomly picks different people from the room, because it means that you can't actually just come to the meeting and have a cup of coffee and do something with your phone, because it's going to be embarrassing if you're not in front of your team paying attention or being able to talk about the things that are your thing. So I think that has been one pretty effective way of my coaches to be more efficient in the team meeting, that make sure that the players are actually taking part in the thought process. But yeah, the project that I was going to talk about is the Finnish women's national team. They got a new head coach, Pasi Mustonen, started in 2014. He has been talking all the time that it's a long project. He has this quote, a better person is a better player. And in everything that you do, you make sure that you build a culture within the team, that you become a better person every day, you become a better teammate, and that way also a better player. There has been a clear question and analysis done. Where are we now? What's our goal? How do we get there? And piece by piece give players more ownership of their development, and then also working a lot in small groups, meaning that the individuals come together as a team, because the difference between an individual sport and ice hockey is obviously that it's not enough that you're a good individual, because you have to be a good teammate as well. You're not going to do well if you're not working as a team. It starts with in this project that they're doing it, is that it starts with a structure. There's a theory, there's a coaching philosophy that goes a lot with the previous presentation. You want to make the members of the team have the feeling of competency, autonomy, and relatedness. And it has been starting with putting together a players' leadership group. There has been 6 to 8 to 10 players that take the lead. They set the example, because if you want to make the players take ownership, you have to make sure that there's a structure in place in the team. There's the players that you can easily look up to. The players are next to you, so you always have somebody who's close enough that you can ask questions. Some examples are that when they come together for a camp, the players' leadership group actually plans a daily schedule for camps. They discuss it then with coaches. There might be some changes made, but the players' group do it first. And then the coaches may do some changes, and there's discussion that if something should be changed. And then the players' leadership group bring that to all players, just so the players definitely feel that they have had a say in it. The idea has been to give them a chance to make a difference, feel that the players are actually having autonomy. And the coach decides the group, but the coach only gives responsibility to who he thinks is ready to take it, not give responsibility to a player who is not ready to take it and might get, or that be harmful for the performance and training if there's things that she's not comfortable with. Bringing in new players. Teams are always going to evolve. Maybe the national team projects in women's side, they're pretty close groups, so it's a long-term process. And there's kind of time to do it. When players come to the first camp, they're probably nervous, feeling a little bit anxious about what's going to happen. One example that has been done is that the players are gathering at a training center. There's a group of new players coming, but instead of going directly to the training center, they have been going first with a minibus to a group of older players, and then they took that 2-hour bus ride together with those older players, so that there's only 5 to 6 people in the bus that you can actually start interacting in a smaller group, and you actually realize that they're not that scary, those older players, and it's a lot easier to arrive to the gathering when you kind of know a few of the players. They have a more experienced player in the players leadership group, and they do a lot of small group work. Even they have different conditioning plans. They work in players group of 5 or 6, and they mix older players and younger players, and they could have a day where the whole group follows the training plan of one of the older players, so that the newcomers can see very close what the older players are actually doing and see how they prepare and what they do, and it's a small group, so they have a chance to ask questions constantly. And after that, the key is that they always are asked how they felt. Is it something that would work for her. They do it in a few different groups, so they can see a few different ways of doing things, and then maybe kind of exchange ideas and always have to think about which one is the best way for them to work. All the players would have a personal development plan, kind of what we started having already later on. Here we have a few of the younger players. In the middle here, we have a 45-year-old player, actually. She was a first-line center, actually, on the team now, which was pretty impressive. The youngest player was 16. The picture is from the day of the final game. She knows pretty well what's working for her. She's done this for 30 years. And it's all about kind of knowing yourself well enough to prepare yourself, even like when it's going to be the biggest game. There needs to be constant communication. Asking about the players are not just being told to go out there and do something. There's interaction between the coaches, asking the players, okay, what are you planning to do today? And then there's maybe discussion that, okay, maybe this might be a good idea to try and do this differently, and things like that. Constant communication and making sure that the player knows who to go to if there's a question on a confusion or something like that. But always ask the player first, so the thought process is there. Got to be very honest with the feedback. You have to know your players and you have to trust your players in order to be able to do it. And of course, all the staff must be on the same page, because it's confusing for the player if you get a different message from different staff. And a lot of work in small groups, with the idea that in a team you have a 20-player locker room. There's going to be the more quiet players. They might be scared to talk when there's 20 players, but when you're in the small groups with 4 or 5, it kind of makes the players get to know each other as well. And I found out that, especially when I was captain in different teams, like it was always when you were in smaller groups, you would get to know your teammate a lot better. And then when you alternate those groups, you're going to have a team where a lot of players know a lot of the others pretty well. And then when you come to a 20-player locker room, it's kind of easier atmosphere because all the players know each other a lot better. So I actually added this after I figured that I'm not going to put it in, but since René started the discussion, but it was a pretty nice story. It was the Team Finland got bronze medal after not getting a medal in the last Olympics in Pyeongchang. So there was kind of this little boom in women's hockey, and now we had the home event. And the final game ended up being the election day in Finland. So there was kind of 2 competing TV shows, the women's hockey final and the national elections. And the top TV viewer for the women's final was 2.4 million, and Finland has 5.5 million people. So in women's hockey, that was a pretty unexpected number. So it definitely showed that it did pay off to have the lot of work put in there. It was a roller coaster of emotions for, I'm sure, the players the most, but everybody in the arena. But you got to respect the result, and it was a first thing in history that the World Championship final was not against US and Canada, so that was a big step anyway. But yeah, so putting it all together, I think important thing is that you have some kind of structure in your team. If you start giving or plan how you start giving more ownership to the players. The players need to know who to go to and who are the people around you. Who are the important people maybe in that circle too, not only in the team, but who do you have around you in your everyday life. It's a learning process. Ask questions, that way the thought process is starting. Guide. The players are at very different stages, so give more responsibility only when they're ready to take it and making sure that there's enough support. Small group, different compositions, so that there's a lot of interaction between and throughout the whole team. Trust, you got the trust. If you're gonna give more responsibility, you need to trust that the things that you're asking for are done. Goal setting is important because you have to figure out where you're going in order to find out how you're going to get there. If you don't know where you're going, you're just going to go around, and make sure that there's both short-term and long-term goals, and find the positive ways to encourage the path towards the goals. Personal development plan for players and follow up with that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Is there burning questions now to Emma before we start heading to coffee break? If not, I could actually throw the same question to Emma that we had for Ulf, because she was explaining also that perhaps her coaching experience in the past didn't always support players becoming responsible. So at what age do you think that this kind of process, what was now in place, for example, with women's national team, could start? So at what age could we, as coaches, perhaps start involving players more as active subjects rather than passive objects in their coaching process?
I think there's not like a reason why you could not start asking questions for even from little kids. Like, you can give them, you're not going to ask the same questions, but you can ask things that, like, what are your favorite things, and kind of start the thought process even there. But of course they have to be very simple questions. But I think that from what I've been talking to both football and hockey coaches and women, I think when you start coming to the youth national team, you start to be more intense with it, like the 14, 15, and then kind of start growing gradually from there, and start with the personal stuff and then advance. And I don't know if you want to go towards the game situations, but definitely start with you can start with young kids, but then the questions need to be very simple. And it's kind of hidden, but I think more intensely like around the youth national team age.
Okay, thank you, Emma. We can continue about this question